Hello, welcome to The Green Show. I'm your host, Ashok Khosla. It is not uncommon for industrialists to take advantage of the free resources of the environment, both as raw materials for their processes and as sinks for their wastes. The costs, of course, are passed on to others who have to breathe the foul air and drink the contaminated waters left over, and to those who have to eke out a livelihood from the deteriorating ecosystem. That, after all, is what the marketplace has been doing for the past couple of centuries, internalizing the benefits and externalizing the costs. But if the invisible hand of the free market is not to become the clenched fist of a neo-feudal economy, our basic assumptions must change, quickly and quite radically. Money cannot be all that counts. People, nature, and life in general are also important. It is our effort on The Green Show to bring you insights that might help each business become a better corporate citizen for its own good and for the good of its neighbors.
In this episode of The Green Show, since long the Hindus have respected the rivers as their mothers. What a river gives to the cities settled on its banks is a lease of life. But sadly and ironically, what Delhi gives back to the Yamuna is exactly the opposite. We have heard of environmental audits being carried out, but have we ever thought of how it could help a company? We travel to Sonar Steering Systems and see how they are doing after carrying out an environmental audit in their factory. And finally, a shocking revelation. The food you eat is not as harmless as it looks. Every day you consume pesticides with it. Let's take a closer look.
The river Yamuna has always been the lifeline of Delhi. It has provided water to its citizens and to its industries. Without complaint, it has taken away their wastes. But the Yamuna could not cope with the unprecedented growth of the city over the past few decades. This river is now dead, killed by overuse and massive neglect. In its 25-kilometer course through the city, the Yamuna receives some 400 million liters of untreated sewage and 20 million liters of industrial effluent every day. What little water the Yamuna has left in it is not even fit for bathing or washing. Why has this, one of our most sacred rivers, been allowed to come to this state? Who is responsible? The government, industry, or the citizens? The Green Show investigates.
Yamuna, a sacred entity in Hindu mythology, a sister to the holy river, the Ganga. Geographically speaking too, Yamuna is of considerable importance. Having a catchment area of 3,45,848 square kilometers, it constitutes 10.7% of the total landmass of the country. Through its course, Yamuna feeds hundreds of cities on its banks. Delhi is one of them. Entering Delhi at Wazirabad and leaving it at Okhla, Yamuna covers a 30 kilometers long stretch in the city. And all through this distance, it is dead, a dead river, as if flowing meaninglessly. Yamuna gets revived only on reaching Etawah, about 400 kilometers from Delhi. A number of tributaries join it here, restoring its pristine glory. Let's take a look at how Delhi kills the Yamuna. The city, settled on its bank some 500 years ago, is paying back today. Having used up the fresh water from it, Delhi now discharges pollutants into it every day. The river is not allowed to enter the city at all. At Wazirabad, most of the water is held in a barrage. The Wazirabad barrage supplies water to Delhi. Delhi consumes 1.2 million cubic meters of water every day and generates 0.96 million cubic meters of wastewater every day, of which 80% is thrown back into the Yamuna untreated. So actually what you see in the Yamuna is sewage, not water. Delhi's offering to the Yamuna is in the form of 17 major drains. These dispose sewage into the water. Najafgarh drain is the first one which Yamuna comes across. This drain alone contributes 40% of the total Delhi sewage. This is the point where Najafgarh drain meets the Yamuna. One can make out the difference in the color of water at the junction point. This might surprise you, but most pollutants thrown into the Yamuna come from homes. Industry too contributes its bit in dirtying the river. Some NGOs had conducted a study on the Yamuna. According to them, the Municipal Corporation of Delhi (MCD) throws over 2,000 million litres of untreated sewage in the river every day. As though not enough, Yamuna receives muck from industries as well. Most Delhi industries do not treat their effluent before discharging it into the river. Dumping a waste to this extent is not only fatal to the aquatic life in the river, but also has enhanced the siltation process. This siltation adds to the suffocation of the river. Not only this, an increase in siltation might lead to floods, which in turn would carry the pollutants to the neighbouring fields. According to a study conducted by Jawaharlal Nehru University, there is a clear-cut downstream increase in the siltation rate from 5 millimeters per year when the river enters Delhi to an astonishing 80 millimeters per year when it leaves Delhi, an increase of over 16 times. The salinity of Yamuna is 3 times higher than that of the world average. Salinity is measured in terms of milli-electrolyte quotient per litre or MEQ per litre. While the world average is 2.83 MEQ per litre, the salinity of Yamuna is 9.66 MEQ per litre. The Central Pollution Control Board has categorized the river water into 3 broad categories. Category C, the lowest, means that water can be made fit for human consumption after minor treatment. Yamuna water even fails to qualify Category C. It has been declared unfit for bathing. Numerous panels and committees have urged the government to take drastic action to save the river. It was only last year that the Yamuna Action Plan was mooted. This was on the lines of the much publicized Ganga Action Plan.
We are going to spend about 300 crores for saving the water of river Yamuna, to treat the whole sewerage water and then to use that water for irrigation purposes and other purposes.
There is all the time hue and cry that Delhi is short of water. It is a problem which has been man-made problem. It is the government which is responsible in creating such a situation. It is the duty of the government to see that the drinking water is made available to every citizen in Delhi.
Only if the government fulfills its promises, the plan's seriousness can be judged. Industry too has to contribute its bit. The percentage of pollutants it throws into the river is smaller as compared to the sewage, but extremely toxic. There has been a proposal to set up common effluent treatment plants in the industrial areas of Delhi, but that too is lying in cold storage.
Some water treatment plants should be located at various places where you find concentration of industries, because the expenditure involved will not be borne by our small scale industries. We are very, very small units. A total investment of 5 to 6 lakhs of rupees, they cannot physically invest, or possibly they cannot invest several lakhs of rupees for putting anti-pollution devices.
The cost of pollution control is also a part of the project cost, or industries have to bear this cost.
Is this attitude also because the rules regarding the fines are very old?
No, the rules are there, the procedures are there, but in many cases we find that the whenever any litigation or case is put up, by virtue of the stay orders and the protracted legal proceedings, decision gets delayed.
As of now, the Yamuna suffers, and it shall continue to do so unless the plan to save it is activated. This can only happen when the industry, the municipal bodies and the government take a concerted approach to tackle this problem effectively. Delhi is the third most polluted city in the world in terms of air pollution. Are the authorities waiting till the Yamuna in Delhi attains a similar position of dubious eminence? Here is where the public comes in. If it mounts pressure on the polluters and the authorities, there is a fair chance of success. Otherwise, the Yamuna is doomed.
Our natural resources are fast depleting. Social campaigns to conserve them are run and rerun. But what is their impact? In some cases, they have made a significant difference. The Confederation of Indian Industries, commonly known as CII, has an environment division. This division is constantly engaged in doing projects with industries which show them a path of resource management. One such industry is Sona Steering Systems. Let's find out how they are saving our most valuable asset, water.
Companies today are racing each other to excellence. In this race, they sometimes forget one important aspect. No matter how much your production grows, if you do not manage your resources well, you might still end up making a loss. This, besides the cost, our Earth has to pay. Steering Systems is one company that realized this before it was too late. Steering Systems are a Delhi-based company with its works at Gurgaon. Steering systems and propeller shafts are manufactured here. The manufacturing process generates a lot of heat. If not cooled, the whole system would come to a stop in just a few hours. Just as your car engine needs a coolant, so do these machines. The coolant used for these machines is a mixture of oil and water. Invariably, too much of water and oil is wasted in the process. The company realized that something was wrong somewhere. But the problem was how to find out exactly what was wrong. So Sona decided to approach the Confederation of Indian Industries, the CII.
Well, you know, CII had set up an environmental division, and I'm quite active in CII, so when I heard about it, I immediately approached CII, and I said that why don't you do an audit in our company, do an environmental audit. So our company was the first company that CII environmental division has done an environmental audit in.
This would help in ascertaining what the problem was, and it worked out. It was what the environmental audit team had expected. Too much water being wasted, not only as a part of the coolant, but otherwise too. Water brought from outside by tankers was stored in an underground tank of 2 lakh cubic meter capacity. This stored water was pumped to the overhead tanks on the buildings. Pipes carried water to the machines, where the water served as a coolant with oil. This mixture was circulated until its cooling capacity lasted. It was then discarded. This, along with the general wastage in the bathrooms and water coolers, leakages and overflow in the overhead tanks, amounted to a gross wastage of more than 4,500 cubic meters per year. Translated in economic terms, it meant a wastage of 0.5 lakh rupees per year.
Industry so far has been adopting end-the-pipe solution, means waste generated. Now you have to manage with that waste, and they form the stage of the waste from one form to another by installing pollution control systems. We wanted to demonstrate that if you follow this environment pollution approach, prevention approach, you can be benefited better.
The CII suggested means and methods to SONA, and SONA took them seriously, very seriously. Not only this, it used its initiative and formed a working team. This team's task was twofold. One, to execute plans to avoid wastage, and two, motivate the workers to be a part of this new strategy. A little variation in the system, some guidance, and the installation of an effluent treatment plant changed the scene. Now the effluent water, which was earlier thrown away, is sent to the ETP via a system of drains. The various tanks at the ETP separate the oil from water. The oil is then sold to companies for recycling, a saving of nearly ₹1 million per year on the oil front, and the water too can be used again.
It is claimed, if we can successfully do it, which I'm sure we'll be able to do it with the plan that we have done, that this water can be even used for drinking. But our plan today is that since the requirement of water every day is so large, we would like to take this back and recycle in our own operations, both in the process as well as in our horticulture and the related needs.
Look at those lush green lawns drinking recycled water. How's that? Green surroundings boasting of a green attitude. It goes to the credit of SONA's management and the CII that they thought of undertaking the environmental audit. A simple exercise translated itself into a major money saver. The often repeated maxim, being green does not mean incurring losses, proved itself here, QED, that which has been proved.
The success of modern agriculture depends on the use of large quantities of fertilizer, water, and energy. It also needs pesticides. These chemicals are toxic not only to pests but to humans as well, especially if they are not used with care, as is the case in India. We use about 2% of the world's pesticide production, yet half of the world's cases of pesticide poisoning and 3/4 of the world's pesticide deaths occur in our country. Worse, these toxics are quite persistent and easily find their way into the food chain, endangering both animals and people for years to come. And what about the workers in the factories that produce these pesticides?
Watch carefully. The foods that you're eating, you're being poisoned, slowly, steadily. In the vegetables, fruits and cereals you consume every day is hidden poison. It is the residue of the pesticide. The chemicals sprayed on plants to kill pests are also killing man. Pesticide residue cause severe damage to the human system. Studies in India confirm that pesticides cause irritation of the eye, blindness, fatigue, distress, dizziness, epilepsy, loss of memory, and polyneuritis. Some give birth to cancer of the skin, lips, stomach, brain, and even leukemia. The list just goes on. Let's see how pesticides trace their path to man. Plants absorb the sprayed pesticide solution. Most of the spray falls on the surrounding soil as well. This kills the invaluable friends of the farmer, the earthworm. Other friendly predators and worms also die. So do the birds and fish feeding on them. If the farms have a river flowing close to them, the water gets contaminated too. Animals drink this water. They feed on birds and fish too. Man eats plants, birds, fish, and animals. That's how these chemicals form a cycle of destruction, more commonly known as the pesticide treadmill. There's a direct route as well. Pesticides have become a professional hazard for many. Those who work in the pesticide industry get direct exposure. In the third world, some 25 million people are poisoned annually by pesticides. All involved in the manufacture, formation, transportation, mixing, application, and disposal of pesticides are at risk. This includes farmhands too. In India, most pesticide accidents occur due to illiteracy, lack of funds, and attention. Our tropical climate also aids the contamination process. There are safety precautions, no doubt, but who cares to see that they are implemented or not? And that's not all. If sprayed in inadequate or excess quantities, pests develop immunity. This defeats the very purpose of using pesticides. But dealers only advocate the use of pesticides that suit their purses. Meanwhile, pesticides continue causing problems. Cereals and vegetables have pesticide residue left in them, and when this residue crosses the maximum permissible limit, the MRL or the maximum residue level, this proves hazardous, not only to health but to a country's economy as well. Our agro-based exports face danger, and then something happened to make matters come to a head. Germany sent back consignments of coffee. This coffee had more than the permitted levels of pesticide residue. For a country which has an annual crop loss worth 6,000 crore rupees due to pests despite pesticides, this sounds an alarm. Is there an alternative to chemical pesticides?
They act very fast. The action is fast. And that's why people prefer these things. And also at the same time, they have a widespread action, which will not be possible in case of biopesticides. And that is the reason that biopesticides have not gained any ground so far in our country.
We have to slowly, gradually decrease the concentration of in pesticide use and simultaneously use the other forms of controls like biological control agents, natural predators, parasites, then botanical pesticides are there. So we cannot totally switch over to organic, but we can definitely bring down the use of chemicals in years to come.
Another solution could be Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. IPM is a system which utilizes predators, cultural practices, resistant crop and livestock varieties, microbial agents, genetic manipulation, and pesticides. An ideal mix of all these elements obtains the best control with the least distribution. The onus of initiating action against this menace is normally on the government. Let's check what it has done about it. It did lay down certain specific guidelines regarding the registration of pesticide firms in the Insecticides Act of 1968. But out of the 139 pesticides registered by the government, only 50 have maximum residue level values up till now. The government's reaction is very slow and seems rather insufficient.
A lot of chemical poisoning is taking place, which every state has to notify, but not a single state is keeping any records. We have been asking questions in the parliament, and there is around 100 to 200 people dying every year, but no records are there of such.
The farmer suffers. The pesticide industry workers suffer. New laws need to be made and implemented. Pesticide residue in foodstuffs has got to be controlled. This is an SOS. Is the government listening?
Life for the few cannot be made much better for long at the expense of the many. Today, a significant portion of our country's population is better off than ever before. But there are also more people who are hungry, poor, and illiterate than there have been ever before in our nation's history. And these numbers are still growing. And the environment, both for the rich and the poor, continues to deteriorate. Poverty and environmental degradation go hand in hand, just as affluence and pollution do. Only a more equitable form of development can save us from the perils of a society engulfed by poverty and pollution. This means that the patterns of consumption of our better-off citizens and the production systems of our economy must change fundamentally. It is the job of the Green Show to explore the directions needed.